Welcome to Toronto, a city where dreams are made and just as often where they are completely priced out of reach. This isn't just a story of buying and selling homes. Today, we're diving deep into the heart of Toronto's real estate market, but this is not your usual property talk. We're unmasking the silent disruptor that's been steering the fate of buyers and sellers alike: blind bidding. You've heard the stories, I'm sure. Home selling for way over asking, buyers left in the dark, fighting an invisible battle. But what if I told you there's more to this story? What if I told you that the system designed to protect your dreams might actually be the one pulling the strings in the shadows? In this video, we're not just sharing tales from the front lines. We're challenging the status quo. From the pitfalls of blind bidding to the voices crying out for change. We're exposing the raw truths and what it means for everyone stepping into the arena of Toronto's real estate. But there may be hope on the horizon. Stay with me as we explore the alternatives, the technology that could redefine our market, and the legislation that might just change the game. Your voice, your power, could be the catalyst for the transformation we so desperately need. So are you ready to uncover the truth? Stick around as we peel back the layers of Toronto's real estate market, because by the end of this video, you'll not only understand the game, you'll be much better equipped to perhaps change it or even beat it. All right, so let's jump right into things. Let's paint a picture. So many of you who have been looking for real estate in the city of Toronto, many of you who are buyers out there in the city of Toronto, you know of this process called blind bidding. Some people may call it holding back offers on a listing. Some people may call it offer presentations at a certain date. Whatever the terminology, people out there, when you're agent or when you read online that there's going to be offers at a certain date, you understand that there's likely going to be a bidding war. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the practice, you may think, okay, bidding war. If you're online, if you go onto eBay, if you're like me and you buy basketball cards online, when there's bidding and an auction, you actually get to see the price in real time moving upwards, right? So if you're bidding like me on a basketball card, I could see that, hey, that new Shea Gilgeous-Alexander card signed auto came up. Right now it's going for, I don't know, $700. I'm willing to bid up to $800. And I can see kind of the bids move up in real time. Toronto real estate is nothing like that whatsoever. Now, there are certain cases and there's certain brokerages out there who have toyed with the option of open bidding and having bids, and we'll get to that in just 1 minute about the open bidding process. But most of the time, 99% of the time, you have no idea what the other bids are. Seller lists a price for a certain price point, and on a certain date, you throw in your bid, not knowing what the other bids are out there, and hoping and praying that your offer gets accepted. That's how things work in Toronto. That's how things have been working in the city of Toronto for decades now. So, this process is clearly very frustrating to buyers out there, especially first-time buyers, anyone out there who may not understand the market. A lot of times people have to go through their lumps. You go through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, sometimes a dozen offer presentations before you can get a house, because the process is a lot to learn. And to be honest, most people, when they first get into it, it's not really a comfortable process. Putting in an offer, not understanding where the bids are, not understanding what you should bid for a property. Now, most of us good agents out there will try and prepare our clients as much as possible prior to a blind bidding scenario. We generally know that in most of these scenarios, it's the offer with the highest price and the fewest conditions will likely win that property. Also tack on the deposit as well. So price, deposit, fewest conditions. You review all of the comparables, the comparable sales that had happened in the last 90 days to kind of get an idea of where the property should sell, what the market value is. And then you present all that information to your buyer and say, hey, these are where all the sales are. You've done all your pre-due diligence. You've done your pre-approval. You've talked to the bank and said, hey, this is how much I might offer for this home. You've done your pre-inspection. You've had a home inspection done, or sometimes the seller will have a pre-inspection. So you take a read through that, see what the home's condition is like. If you're buying a condo, you may review the status certificate in advance. You've done all your due diligence in advance, and then you throw in your offer on offer night based on all that pre-due diligence, the comparables and the values we looked at in the neighborhood or the building, and you feel comfortable with the number, You put in your offer on that number, and then you wait. And the way things work is generally a property is listed on a Wednesday, Tuesday. The following Monday through Wednesday, they review offers. Your offer goes in. You have no idea. I mean, the only little bit of information that you'll have on an offer night is perhaps how many offers are actually on the property you're offering on, right? It could be 2, 3, a dozen, 20. That's all you know, right? So you're putting in your offer, and then you're just hoping and praying that your offer gets accepted. Now, many of you who've been through this understand you put in your offer. If there are more than 5 or 6 offers, sometimes you may go to multiple rounds of bidding as well. So you could go to 2, 3, 4. I mean, I've seen 5 or 6 rounds sometimes of people improving their offers. Now, this whole process as it's happening, especially when you get into multiple rounds of bids, it's all blind. So every single time you're putting in an offer, all you know is how many other offers are on the table. In multiple rounds, sometimes an agent may give you a little bit of information saying, hey, you might be in the top 3, you might be in the top 2, whatever. And as you're going through these rounds, you're putting more and more money on the table, not having any clue what the other offers are. I mean, it's a process that, funnily enough, most agents that I speak to absolutely despise, but most of us still use it because it's a tool at our disposal to get the most money for our seller. So now that we understand how the blind bidding process works, why do we use it? Well, I mean, there's a theory out there that, a blind bid can help get the seller the maximum amount of money. And in many cases, it does. If the property's well marketed, if you get a lot of offers, if you kind of dip into that FOMO, that fear of missing out mentality with buyers, it can really push most properties well beyond what the last property sold for. Because when buyers are in the heat of battle trying to beat out other bids, a lot of times they can push their bids well beyond what the market value is for a property because they don't want to lose out. Again, tapping into that FOMO mentality. Now, those are the best case scenarios. I've seen actually many scenarios where perhaps a property doesn't achieve its maximal potential. I've had buyers myself who've chosen either to not offer on a property because they know there's going to be multiple bids, or sometimes in the heat of battle, thinking that after they've put in their initial offer, all of the other offers on the table have potentially beat their max value or what they thought the property's worth. So they choose after the first round, hey, we're not going to bid any more money. Well, let's see what it sells for. And then the next day, or even sometimes that evening, we then find out that the property sold for X. And my clients are like, I would have paid that price, or I would have paid $20, $30, $40, $50,000 more than what the property sold for. But because of the blind bidding process, the seller, in many cases, likely don't have any understanding that there was that potential money on the table. So they accepted an offer based on a price where there were certainly some buyers out there in many cases who were probably willing to pay more than what the property sold for. So while on one hand we keep saying, and you'll hear people in the industry saying, well, we're doing what's best for our sellers, and in some cases you are, but there are many cases where you're actually probably not getting maximal value for that property, because in an open bidding system, if everyone can see what the bid values are, there is a chance in many cases that you are actually going to be able to get more money for your seller, because then a buyer has all of the information on the table and they can say, hey, yes, most of the properties are, let's say, selling for 1.2 million in this neighborhood, but I'm willing to go to 1.25 because I grew up in this neighborhood. I see that there's more value, and I'm willing to take the risks associated with going slightly above market value because I absolutely love this property. So from my perspective, why we keep saying that it is in the seller's best interest to have a blind bid, it's not always in the seller's best interest, and in many cases, sellers are leaving money on the table. Now, those of you who follow real estate closely understand that the real estate industry has gone through some regulatory changes. So they brought in a new set of rules called TRESA, the Trust in Real Estate Services Act, I believe, is what that acronym stands for. So it's pretty ironic that this new act is called the Trust in Real Estate Services, because in my opinion, it doesn't actually address many of the components of trust that especially buyers out there are looking for, right? It's tough to trust a process when it's opaque and you have no idea what's going on the other side. Now, within the new regulations, there is a provision where sellers can choose to actually have an open bidding process. I'll be quite honest with you, I've yet to come across a bidding war scenario or a multiple offer scenario in the city of Toronto where there is an open bid. People and real estate agents are usually slow to adapt, and I personally haven't come across one of those scenarios. I'm sure they have existed, but again, I haven't come across one just yet. So there is a provision in the act that says we are allowed to have an open bidding process. However, buried in that, or perhaps something that's not really talked about, is that sellers can choose during the process of receiving offers. At any point in the process of receiving offers, they can choose. So if they've said from the onset, hey, yeah, we're going to have an open process, they receive offers, they can then choose to say, no, now we're going to close it down. It is now a blind process. We are not going to share any of the information that's contained in any of these offers. And the only information that we are legally bound to provide is how many offers we have on the table. That doesn't really sound like a fair, open, and trustworthy process, in my opinion. In my opinion, if you have chosen to have an open bidding process, you have to stick to that process. You can't just choose once you've received 7 offers on the table to all of a sudden close it down and not share the contents of these offers. In my opinion, that act should have been written in clear language saying, if you are having an open bid process, it must stay open bid and you can't revert to a closed bidding process once it's begun. I also believe that legislation actually should have been written that we no longer have blind bidding process whatsoever in Ontario or in the city of Toronto. I think far too often when we're creating these rules in Ontario, we so often look at the seller and protecting the seller, and everything is in the hands of the seller, as in the seller's this entity and we can't upset them in any way, right? So if you already own property, you are protected. We have to ensure that we allow new buyers to enter the market. And some of our affordability crisis, and I know some realtors try to absolve themselves of any responsibility in the affordability crisis, but we do play a part. And when our industry has these opaque processes that in many cases will inflate pricing of properties, especially in trendy neighborhoods or in areas of cities that people really desire and people really want to buy into, in many cases we are contributing to the elevated price points in these areas. So when a certain area is hot and pricing is shooting up and it's an opaque process and only the buyers with the most resources are able to purchase properties there and push pricing up, it really will affect the overall price in the entire neighborhood, because when we look at average price in a city, in a neighborhood, in an area, those elevated numbers will push up the overall average price, or it brings up the price overall in the entire area. So while TRESA has addressed some of this, they didn't go far enough, in my opinion, to actually do what they say they're going to do. In the title, in the name of this act, is Trust in Real Estate Services. You can't trust a service when it's opaque, when you don't know what's going on the other end. So instead of me just sitting here and complaining, right? A lot of people online and on YouTube, they can come up with a lot of complaints, come up with a lot of problems and not offer solutions. There are solutions out there to this problem. Number one, I would say, is that TRESA needs to be amended. I know it just got brought in, but in my opinion, it should be amended, and we should ban the practice of blind bidding entirely. Listen, I have ran offer presentations with blind bids. Again, as a realtor, I do what my client wants, and if blind bidding is allowed to be used, it's a tool that I have used in the past. Is it something that I'm going to use much in the future? To be honest, from my perspective and my position as a realtor, I don't really like it. And unless if I have a scenario where my seller is adamant that we use this process and we're still able to use it, I'm going to try and convince my sellers not to use that and to list their properties at an appropriate price point. Are we going to have offer dates? Sure, but I believe that we should actually list the property for a lot closer to what its market value is, to not create any false pretense of what the market value is. So in a lot of offer presentations, you list the property for well below what market value is, and you hope to receive a bunch of offers. And usually it's the offers that come in that are nowhere close to market value that help inflate the price of the offers that came in pretty close to market value. So I believe that if I do have a seller that wants to use this process, at the very least, we will list the property closer to market value. But let me go back. I believe that TRESA should be amended, even though it's brand new regulation, to now ban the process of blind bidding. Now, you could say, okay, we've banned the process of blind bidding. That doesn't get rid of some of all the nefarious stuff that's going on the back end as well with an opaque process. My other solution is that, especially here in Toronto and as a member of TREB, the Toronto Real Estate Board, the Toronto Real Estate Board has invested a ton of money into blockchain technology. So our listings system and our booking systems and all of their new technological systems are built on top of a blockchain platform. Now, blockchain is super powerful. Those of you who follow the crypto space or the NFT space or anything like that, you might have a basic understanding. But effectively what blockchain is an open ledger platform. So anything contained in the blockchain cannot be changed. It's called immutable data. So once it's on there, you can see it and you can't change it. So with that blockchain platform, I'm shocked that they never came up with a proper offer registry platform that can be built on top of our listing platform. So when you have a property listing listed for sale or for rent, when an offer goes in, you have to register that offer on the blockchain, where you can see who submitted the offer, so the brokerage and the agent that submitted the offer. You would find out the price, right? And you'd find out some of the key metrics, whether it be possession date, how many conditions are contained in the offer, and deposit. So if you had a system where you actually had an open ledger that maybe not the general public, but at least all agents could view and relay information to their buyer when they're offering and saying, hey, I see these 6 offers that are registered on the property. I can see the price. I can see their deposit amount. I can see the date. I think with this piece of technology, what you would have is that the ledger stays closed until the date and time where the listing agent says this is when we're reviewing offers. So let's say if you had to have offers in on a Wednesday at 5 p.m., everyone who's registering offers registers their offers, right? So all you can see on that ledger is X amount of offers that have been registered and perhaps the brokerage that registered those offers. And then at whatever date and time, so let's say Wednesday at 5 p.m., you start reviewing offers, all of a sudden, all the information is bang. It's open and all the people who've offered can now see where their offer ranks in terms of price, deposit, conditions, so on and so forth. So now when you move on to a second round, if you are going to have a second round, you now understand where you sit amongst the other offers that are registered, and you can then choose to move up or move down or walk away, right? In many cases, and I would say in many cases where some agents and sellers may be afraid that after that first round, everyone will walk away except for the top offer. I truly believe that offers in second and third place, once they see all the offers on the table, or even sometimes an offer way down to 5th place, will move up after that first round once they see all the numbers, because then they can actually make an educated decision whether they want to move up. And in some cases, could be actually that first place person that actually bows out. Who knows how it's actually going to play out? But those are my solutions. A, to change the legislation, and then B, to actually use the technology that we're already using in real estate to improve the systems and to allow for this open bidding process to actually work in a transparent and open process. I think the funniest thing ultimately with all the changes to the act and everything going on is that I actually found this study online, and you can see it right here behind me. Most agents, when they were surveyed, actually agree or actually do not agree with blind bidding. Most agents actually want an end of blind bidding. So it's funny that when these regulations are made, who are they actually made for? Number one, who's actually creating the legislation? And who are they creating it for? This is the problem with sometimes politics. People get into politics and laws are made under the premise that they're doing it for the people or the people asked for this, but I don't think anyone's actually asking for blind bidding to stick around. So we're holding on to this archaic remnant of old real estate under the belief that this is what sellers want, this is what agents want, when truthfully, this is not what anyone really wants, but yet we're being pushed these regulations and rules that we don't even want. We actually want rules that state that we want an open bidding process. And the only reason why agents use blind bidding is because they can use blind bidding. It's actually kind of insane when you think about it, right? I mean, if you let's like take a step back, you say, okay, rules. We live in a city, a lot of us want to be free. I mean, there's a lot of big push online for some of you about freedom. And yes, we all believe in freedom, but you still sometimes have to have rules and regulations. Where I drive on the highway, I like the idea that the speed limit is 100. Do I go over 100 sometimes? Hopefully police aren't watching this, but yeah, sure, you go over 100 sometimes on the highway. But imagine if there was no speed limit on the highway. I may go a little bit over 100, right? But if there was no speed limit, there'd be people on the highway doing 200, 250. Imagine how dangerous and chaotic the highway would be without any rules and regulations saying this is how fast you can go. And you can kind of throttle that speed. So if someone goes over, they're going over by maybe a little bit, maybe they're going 120, 130. I mean, in Toronto, I've seen people doing 160, 170 on the highway. But when they get caught, they get the book thrown at them if they're going to go that fast, because it's super dangerous to drive that fast on the highway. But again, there's a rule in place to kind of throttle it in. So I'm not saying from a real estate perspective we should get rid of offer presentations at all. I'm saying it should just be an open process. I think you should have the right to list a property and for $1 and say, hey, let's let the market decide what the value of this property is. That is open and fair. That is an open system, right? I believe that you should let the market dictate what people are willing to spend. But the rules should be in place where it should be an open process where you can see what other buyers are willing to spend. And then you can make an educated decision based on whether you want to move your bid further up the pecking order and get the property. And then you can decide based on a whole bunch of information at your disposal if you wanted to, let's say, go over market value for a particular property, because sometimes there's truly some subjective values that certain properties have to certain buyers. So I guess to summarize all of this stuff, to kind of wrap it all up, ultimately the bidding system in Toronto and in the province Ontario is broken. It doesn't really lend itself to being that open, transparent process that it should be. And the new act that was introduced, the Trust in Real Estate Services Act, does nothing, or doesn't do enough, I should say, to build some of that trust back into the real estate industry. There should be more regulations out there to prohibit some of the practices that are perceived as unfair, and in many cases are unfair. We actually should have some more regulations that kind of rein in some of that activity to actually make it a more open and fair process to allow more people to enter the market. Will this lead to affordability overnight? Not necessarily. There's a lot of other parts of real estate that need to be fixed. Number one of those is just building more homes. But, I mean, there are some small fixes like banning the practice of blind bidding that may help at least shine a light and bring more transparency to the process. So originally when I made this video, I thought of just making an update on TRESA, the TRESA Real Estate Services Act, and I think enough realtors out there have just made these videos about what TRESA is, where I felt I had to get into really what the guts of some of this legislation was and some of the things that they tried to fix. And blind bidding was the thing that it was wrapped up and ready for our regulators to fix, and they chose to kind of keep it status quo, really, other than giving us a little bit of a taste of like, hey, you can do open bidding, but we're not going to force you to do open bidding. We're still going to allow you to do things the way you used to do it before, and then just say, hey, we gave realtors the option of doing it. They chose not to, and blame them. Yeah, you can blame us, but also I think we shouldn't be allowed to necessarily run bidding processes in that manner. So again, we have the technology, we have the government regulation at our disposal. We should be able to make this process a heck of a lot better. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. What do you think of the open bidding process? Do you think it's fair if you're a seller? If you're a buyer out there, have you been through these multiple bidding wars, losing out on properties and just feeling discouraged by the process? We'd love to hear your comments. Please comment down below. It'll also inform some of our other videos, and we can maybe answer some of your questions that you have about TRESA, about open bidding, and about the whole system of offering on homes here in the city of Toronto, or even in the province of Ontario. Or if you don't live in Ontario or in Toronto, we'd love to hear how things work in your area. If you're in the US or if you're in another country, we'd love to hear all of that. Please comment away down below. So that's it. That's it for today's show. As always, we'd like to sign off with, in real estate, as in life, the next big thing might just be where you least expect it. So remember, stay curious, stay knowledgeable. Peace out.